You're listening to Discography Discussion, episode 247, Kekal. Hosted by Dan Terry.
People still listening to that Pantera episode.
Geoff Kane.
Talk about the best early 2000s metalcore bands.
And Joseph Wren. Because if you don't take my advice and Dan's advice and some of Jeff's advice, presented by discussmetal.com. And if your dream is in this moment, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe. That is Dan. That is Geoff. I want to get this right out of the way at the beginning. Scroll down the show notes, click the link, go to Bandcamp, spend the $25, buy the entire Kekal discography. Don't listen to anything Geoff says for the next hour and 49 minutes.
Which Geoff are you speaking of? Because you're correct. One of the two Geoffs you should not be listening to at all.
It's the Geoff that spells his name wrong.
Okay, the one with a J.
No, the one with a G.
Nah, definitely a J.
Nah, bro. This is going to be a hot episode, guys. I apologize. Geoff from Kekal, if you're listening, I like you.
We are down to do the interview, sir.
We are down to
just
do the
show
interview.
up. We'll do the thing. It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, he could be the greatest guy on the face of the earth, and I'd be cool with him. But his vocal stylings, not so much. Actually, you know what? I take that back. Just no clean singing, please. Please, no more clean singing.
Oh boy. Okay, so yeah, we've got this one off to a great start. I can't wait for this. Guys, this is going to be like an old school episode. I mean, if you guys have been clamoring for the days that someone's going to go on a rant or somebody's going to yell or we're going to insult Geoff horribly, you guys have tuned in. This is classic discography discussion.
No, it's not going to be classic because Dan and I aren't shit-faced drunk and we're both not hating on In Flames.
Hey, I mean, I'm drinking water out of a Taco Bell cup. That's from like 2 days ago.
That's hardcore right there.
Yeah, I mean it's a thing. It's a thing that technically exists. I'm excited to talk about Kekal because they're a band that I don't feel like really gets their due, and I'm going to say it. I think they're one of the most creative bands out there as far as like black metal and all of that goes. They don't really play black metal all the time. They kind of went away from it for a while, and now they're back. Kind of to that style, and they're playing kind of like a mixture of all their stuff now. And I really enjoy it. I've been listening to Kekal for half my life, so this will explain sort of some of the fanboyism that I get into whenever we're trying to talk about these records objectively. So words like "you're wrong," "you're stupid," "I don't know who you are anymore," you know, those words might be said on this episode. It's not as harsh as some of the words we have said in the past, but you know, they could be. Let's put it this way: this episode's going to be like playing Mario Kart with your friends.
Well, before Geoff has the ultimate swing of all moods, I'm going to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, then you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. So if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening. And now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
We do enjoy our 5-star reviews here on Discography Discussion. Leave us a review wherever you can, and we'll read it on the show. Simple as that. We got some awesome comments on some kind of a good spread of old episodes. I'm gonna read 3 of them, and the first one is from Chris on YouTube. He says, "Just found you guys a week ago. I fucking love it. Keep it metal, boys." Well, we will keep it metal for boys and for everyone else. We appreciate you for checking it out and commenting. Chris also commented on our both of these comments were on our Chimera episode. And he says, "This Present Darkness was the first album, by the way. LOL. Pass Out was the first major record label, though." Whereas that is true. This Present Darkness was released before Pass Out of existence. It's a EP and kind of a sore subject on this podcast, but we do not usually talk about EPs on the show, except for when we do. But this was one of those cases where we didn't. So sorry about that, but you get the point. Glad you're listening to the show.
Yeah, it's only like seminal ones that we do, like Fragile with like Nine Inch Nails and Jar of Flies with Alice in Chains, stuff like that. It's so generally rare that we actually speak of the EPs. And it's just mainly because, number one, some EPs, good luck in finding them.
Absolutely.
I mean, just absolutely good luck. And I'm because it's not even available on streaming. It's not available anywhere. They only made 100 of them, and you're trying to find it. So, unless you guys want to, give them to us, which we're happy with that.
danandjoeshow@gmail.com. Let us know.
Yeah. But the other thing too is that sometimes that just you expand it so much, because there's also stuff like Zayo. They have splits that there's always something extra. It just made it for the format. Just the long plays are the easiest route to go. Now, we've talked about, if you guys want us to do EPs, we've thought about doing it on Patreon. You just got to give us some shout outs and tell us what to do, and we'll go from there.
$1 a month gets you into that exclusive album review feed.
Is it time?
So, Dan, tell me about Kekal.
Joe, I am so glad that you asked. And I'm excited to be doing this episode because, like I said, I've been listening to Kekal for half my life. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't even know if the name of the band is pronounced Kekal. That's just what I've always called them. I have heard them referred to as Kekal before, but I'm just going to use, what I learned about reading growing up and say that since it's, a consonant, a vowel, and a consonant, that it's pronounced Kekal.
Oh, I thought you said Kegel, like Kegel exercises.
No, not quite like that. But yeah, I'm gonna call him Kekal. If that's wrong, I apologize. But yeah, we're gonna say Kekal a whole bunch of times in this episode about Kekal.
What is this band? This band is A Dream for a Moment. Now that you've gotten that out of the way, go listen to whatever random combination of atmospheric, black metal, some industrial elements in places, and just get it out of the way. The drummer is the laptop sitting on the corner of the stage, and we're fine with it in this case.
Yes, you guys are.
Jeff is not having a good time
tonight. It's the royal
we,
Jeff. It's the royal we. Kekal is largely considered to be a heavy metal band at their base, but they did put out a decent amount of basically electronic albums. Still kind of rock based, still a little bit of metal here and there. Every now and again, the extreme vocal will come out. So this is a band that started off, in 1995 in Jakarta, Indonesia, which is this may be the first Indonesian metal band we've talked about on the show.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think that's significant because what they were doing in the 90s, I think was wholly unique, putting out black metal albums. And they weren't black metal in the traditional sense. There was a lot of weird prog and thrash. I mean, there's a lot there in sometimes within one song. And so they kind of follow that archetype of being a progressive thrash metal, death metal, black metal band, just throwing as many different styles in there, even some influences from traditional heavy metal. And then as time goes on, they start getting kind of more industrial, and then industrial gives way to just them being a straight up electronic band.
Yeah, I was gonna say they go a lot of different directions, and that might be part of it, is that it just feels disjointed to me.
Too random for the king of random. That is Discussmetal Jeff.
Yeah, but there's normally segues with my randomness, and I feel that is it is a severe lack in this instance, personally.
In my opinion, I just don't care.
I know you don't.
It's just
this is your guys' God Lives Underwater, because I worship the altar God Lives Underwater.
And I didn't like God Lives Underwater that much.
Yeah, I understand it, because it's going back. So, it's just out. It's just you're listening to it, and it's formative for me, just like how Kekal is formative for you guys, and I totally get that, and I respect that. It doesn't mean I have to enjoy it.
Oh, you will enjoy it, or you won't. It's impossible to know if you'll ever actually enjoy it or not.
1998, Beyond the Glimpse of Dreams.
So this was the debut album. That's probably why Joe announced it first. This is an interesting one. I actually didn't hear this album for a long time. I don't think until it was available digitally, and I really like it. It's as Geoff would tell you, it is all over the place. It is a mixture of like death metal, thrash metal, black metal, mostly black metal with the black metal shrieks. There's a little bit of clean vocal in there.
Yeah, but this is the one that has mostly the female clean vocals, right?
There's mostly female. Well, no, that's the next one. This one has some as well, I believe. I could be wrong about that, but
yeah, because if I remember right, this is the one that I didn't mind it as much as some of the others, if I remember correctly. Yes, it's disjointed, but the black metal was kind of was sped up, right? I'm thinking
it was a little fast, and I think a lot of that has to do with they've always credited their drummer as the black machine or the black box. So they never made any bones about, hey, we don't have a real drummer, we have a digital only drummer. But like I think that it eventually became part of the sound, I think maybe the first album it was maybe done out of convenience
or necessity.
Yeah, convenience, necessity. But yeah, I like this one just because the sheer amount of diversity that's present on the first record. Now, it is a little dense. I have to admit that like 51 minutes of like riffs constantly changing, I think it's cool, but I could have gone for maybe like an album that was closer to like 35 to 40 minutes. Because you have songs on there that are really good, like My Eternal Lover is 6 minutes and 14 seconds long, and it's just it's slow and it's atmospheric and it's keyboardy, and I like those songs on their own. I just don't like them on the album, if that makes sense. Like I could listen to like a 2-song where Kekal's like, all right guys, let's slow it down a little bit here, and do something like that. I like songs more like Rotting Youth.
All right, lovers, get out on the dance floor.
All right, it's time for My Eternal Lover, followed by A Dream for a Moment. We've been Kekal. But no, I like songs like Rotting
great.
Youth and Armageddon. I really like The Conversion because they play a melodic, they play like a little musical like motif that I think really, really defines the Kekal sound, if that makes sense. Their melodic sensibility, I feel like, sort of lives in this song, The Conversion. A lot of the weird melodic stuff that Kekal's going to do in the future is going to be very similar to this. And I thought, I always liked this. I always associated it with the band. But yeah, this record for the most part is blistering in your face, like black metal with like some thrash, some prog, some heavy metal. There's a lot going on this record.
Yeah, even though there's a lot going on, I think this is probably one of the I think this was one that has some of the least amount of male clean vocals, if I remember.
Yes, it does have the least amount of male clean vocals, Geoff.
And I think that's the reason why no, I'm serious. Some people just get the mic out of their face if they're clean singing. That's I'm one of those people. Don't ask me to sing, I guess. I don't know. But no, I actually didn't mind this one as much as some of the others. Yeah, it's disjointed. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on. But for a freshman effort, I give him props. And I don't know, did I listen to the remastered? Is that what you guys sent me?
Yeah. What you heard was from the Bandcamp, and yeah, that would have been on the highest quality possible. Yeah. So it actually sounds pretty good. For considering the year.
That was part of the reason why I was asking, because I was like, it sounded, just production wise better than what I was expecting from a black metal band from 1998 from Jakarta. It's not like Jakarta's some like tiny backwater. I think it's bigger than any city that's in the United States. I think it's 10 something million people. I think that's just the city. That's not even the metropolitan area, if I remember right. Anyway, it's not like I'm just going to spend this whole time shitting on the band. Okay. I'm not, that's not who I am.
Just the second half.
Just the second half. Yeah. The only time I'm going to shit on a whole episode is probably going to be, I don't know, something like if you're a kitty toucher or you try to kill your wife, so no lost profits, no As I Lay Dying. And I'll behave most of the time.
You did a 4-hour episode on anyway.
Yeah. And I shit on him almost the whole time.
You did. Okay. We're off track.
All right.
This album is a blast into the past for me because this is the era of we have the technology. We can record heavy metal songs that sound really good. We just don't have a drummer. What do we have? This program with sounds that approximate black metal drums. We'll just program the songs and that's the record, guys. It'll be fine, right? And it did become part of the band's style, but it reminds me of 1998 independent music, where the less popular genres were being creative. They just didn't have a full band of people to play music with. So you had a choice. You could make the music best you could and fill in the gaps with technology, or you could play something else that you didn't really enjoy. So here's Kekal writing what is very interesting, atmospheric at times, brutal at times, random, heavy metal, progressive, atmospheric, all the words that we like to use when we talk about this band. And the drummer is a fucking drum machine. And I just don't care. For some reason, it's the right combination of good mixed with we ran out of money, so this is the best we could do. And we put a full-length record out. That's going to become a trend for many bands along the way, but not very many put out 12 albums in the past 20 years.
And still never got a real drummer. I think it was an intentional choice the whole time to give it something different. Like what I know of the band now, I think that, there's always been kind of this idea of like, let's keep it a little electronic. And if you think about it too, that for a record that sounds like Beyond the Glimpse of Dreams, if they had a real black metal drummer in there on the kit, it would sound like trash anyway, because that's just the way that black metal drums sounded, So in a lot of ways, this is actually a little bit more clear than what you would normally get. I cannot say the same about the next album.
1999, Embrace the Dead.
The album that's been remastered a billion times. Really only twice. But this is the first Kekal album that I actually have or owned on CD. I don't remember where I got it, if I'm being totally honest. I didn't import it. I must have got it from one of those like Christian metal sites, because that's also sort of an aspect of Kekal, is that there's a thread of Christianity, more so in these first 2 or 3 records. Then that kind of goes away after a while, because their lyrics have, I think, really only on Beyond the Glimpse of Dreams is it really like that noticeable. But Embrace the Dead, now that I can compare the first 2 albums against one another, I think this sounds sonically inferior to Beyond the Glimpse of Dreams, but I think musically it's better. Like the songs are better. I remember the songs individually a lot better on this record. It's hard to get past the way that it sounds. Even the remastered sounds kind of rough, but there's a reason for that. It's because the band basically, like, to cut a long story short, they had almost like no budget. They were recording on like a broken 16-track analog tape recorder, and because of like budgeting, they couldn't actually like book a solid block of studio time. They had to like wait for other bands to be done recording, so they'd like
use their leftover time or something.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So like somebody paid for an hour and there was 15 minutes left. They just run in. Like, what they do? Just hang out.
I don't think they did that. I don't think they ran in, but they would like they'd have to wait. Hey, Kekal's here. No, I think what they would do.
Kekal's been like, here all day long, waiting for a chance to get in.
They probably got a reduced rate to come in after business hours, and the studio was like, okay, but nobody's going to be there, and you guys are going to have to record all this stuff yourself. Probably got a massive discount for that. But you can imagine what that looks like, right? So like, let's Joe can tell you.
Trent Reznor did that.
Yeah, I mean, Joe can tell you how long it takes you to really like hone in that perfect guitar sound that you're looking for. It doesn't matter what it is. It just matters that you find it to be perfect. And it'll take you, probably an hour, 2 hours. As a vocalist, it felt like 7 hours. But like, once you get it, you get it. Now imagine once you're there, then you've got like an hour to record your parts, and then you don't get them all done right away. And then you like leave, come back the next day. And I hope you wrote down those exact settings that you had before, because if you didn't, you're going to have to basically start over from scratch to get your guitar to sound consistent.
Oh, and by the way, we moved all the microphones, changed all the cables. We took down the baffles, and we blew a couple speakers in that cabinet. Good luck.
Yeah. Not only that, but they're also talking about how, like, and you can actually read a lot of this on their Bandcamp. But they talk about how they had all these technical issues and financial problems, and that they had that 16-track analog tape recorder. They said that it basically did not have a stable speed at all. So like what would happen is like they would sit there, record out for hours and hours and hours, and then listen back and be like, this is not playing at the correct speed.
Oh,
that sounds more black metal.
I mean, you've heard the record. I mean, it's we're lucky it sounds as good as it does, I guess is what I'm saying. Like the fact that they were able to actually finish this and do this and it'd be a full length record. But like I said, I think sonically it doesn't sound really amazing, but I almost like the lo-fi-ness of it. And I think the use of keyboards, the use of the female vocals, the melodic segments, and even the clean singing, I think it all comes together a lot better on this record. And they write songs that are much more memorable. This isn't just like, okay, we're going to play a black metal part, and then we're going to transition into a death metal part, and then transition into a heavy metal part, and then transition into a thrash segment. You know, like these songs were much more composed, and they're a little bit more rooted in black metal, I think, than any other style on this record.
The coolest thing about this record is the vocals. Everything sounds frantic, the way that it's layered on top of this very bad sounding guitar. I want to love the record for being more technically interesting, and I can almost get through it without noticing the inconsistencies. There's something about the vocal delivery and the way that they layered it on this one that sounds frantic. It sounds underground and like it's trying to convey an emotion of unsettling. And I think that's really cool. It's different. It's not the easiest record to listen to, especially when the following records get a lot better from a production standpoint. But it's 1999. It's their second release. And to quote you, Dan, you've had your whole life to write the first one. Can you do it again?
Oh, I think they did it again. And here's another real quick, so that Geoff can say whatever Jeff's going to say. There are male clean vocals on this album, and I think they're fantastic. They're done in like this kind of like chanting. It's really cool. There's like an echo effect on his voice. It sounds really cool. I like it. I don't even necessarily know if that's Geoff, the lead, the main guy. I don't know if that's him doing that or not, but it sounds really cool. You can hear it on the song "Embrace the Dead." I think it's cool.
Yeah, I guess the Dan said black metal, Joe said underground, so the low production quality kind of matches. And you're right. I mean, I totally get the whole starving artist struggling thing. I mean, we all tried doing it ourselves, so I can't discredit it, but at the same time, it is it's another pass for me. It's hard for me to listen to it, truthfully. It just doesn't scratch that itch for me like it did for you guys. You know what? I'm sure if I grew up with it, I'd have a different perspective. But just diving in feet first on 12 albums, sight unseen, it's pretty rough. I mean, that's the best way for me to put it. One of the things for me as we go through these that the two things that really stick out to me besides the male vocals that I have had challenges with is, number one, the keyboard. Sometimes it sounds like my Casio keyboard from when I was 8 years old. So, I mean, some people will think that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I could tell that, they were on a budget. They didn't have the pedals to get the sounds exactly the way they wanted on the guitar. I mean, you could just tell that it was just off a little, that it was, low budget, amateurish. I mean, because that's where we all start from, whenever we're trying to strive to, make it within the music industry. So, I mean, I get it. It's something that I have a hard time, listening to, but it doesn't mean that I can't appreciate the effort. I mean, I'm not gonna knock on them for that. It's just the finished product. It is what it is. I'm glad they were able to get it out, for their sake, but it's another pass for me.
Geoff, would you say your week was the painful experience?
Yeah, I tell you what, but between getting my dumbass COVID booster, fuck, I was sicker on that than I was the shot, the first two shots, and then listening to Kekal. Yeah, It was like a fever dream listening to Kekal while, 103 fever on your stupid boosters. Yeah, it was an interesting experience to say the least. I don't know. Maybe that's kind of, colored my, my thought process on it. Who knows? I don't know.
2001.
This album is called The Painful Experience, based off of their wonderful painful experience at the recording studio recording the previous album. That's why they called the next album The Painful Experience. Huge step up in production value on this one.
Yeah, they're at a different studio altogether, right?
Yeah, they sound a lot better.
Yeah, agreed.
The album starts off interesting because it starts off sounding basically like Cradle of Filth at first, which I thought was interesting. But as this record goes on, this is where the band, this might be one of the most divisive records for the band. This could be a lot of, like, if you loved the two albums before this, I think that this might be a jumping off point for you because it gets weird, and it gets weird pretty fast. I think one of the biggest issues with it is that, like, I don't say issues. Let's talk about what I like about it. The first thing that I like about it is that
the power metal.
I like the kind of the power metal sort of sound. Avant-garde. That's the word that everybody used to describe Kekal for years, was avant-garde metal. And this is where they actually start sounding like that. This is where they still have that black metal as their kind of like main ingredient, but they start throwing in weird jazz elements, like jazz fusion, some ambient, some progressive rock, like a lot of different things. They throw a lot of stuff at the wall on this record.
It starts off sounding like a buzzsaw was thrown into a beehive and then turned loose on your senses, and what you get is an industrial blast beat insanity. I don't even know how to finish this thought because the record takes off into this randomness that at a glance it's not very good, but I've definitely heard more money put into a less interesting record by people that you've read about in the Guitar magazine.
Yeah, it's weird because everything about this record's weird. Everything about this band's weird.
Thank you very much. Jeff appreciates that.
I don't mean it as a bad thing. It's just they've never been satisfied with just like being a band that puts records out. And I think that they threw a lot of stuff at the wall. I think riff wise it works, black metal shrieking wise it works. But dude does some like weird falsetto scream, yell, sing things on this record that it just didn't work. It just doesn't, like, when I first heard this album, I was like, oh, The Painful Experience is not a clever name then. Okay. But I mean, hats off. I got exactly what it said on the cover, right? I think with this stepped up production, it's interesting that they didn't try to, like, I don't know, put out something similar to like Embrace the Dead again, or, now that they had, a little bit better budget, maybe they could put out a really great sounding black metal record. And I don't think that this is a great sounding black metal record because I don't think that it is a black metal record, truly. I think we're meant to believe that it is. It starts off that way. But once you start getting into some of this weird, like, I don't know, just like there's like little power metal bits and like symphonic bits and like, there's like, is it weird that like, it reminds me a little bit of Iron Maiden in a weird way?
I was going to say, just because you can doesn't mean you should. That's part of it for me. What I think of a lot of times, too, on this one was Bob Ross is there. He's painting his pretty little trees.
Happy little trees, Jeff.
Yeah, his happy little trees. And then the acid drop hits. And it just, what the fuck happened? That's kind of what I got. I mean, it's just another one that's all over the place. It's kind of like, what am I listening to today? What do I like about it? How can I incorporate it into the music I'm making? And I think that happens a lot. Because there's I can't remember. I know it was one of the later albums, and we'll get to it, and I'll speak on it if you guys can help me. There's like some R&B hits to it, and I'm like, and I was just like, wow, this is crazy. This is all over the place. But yeah, you're right. I definitely got like the power metal Maiden vibe on this too.
And I think that's fine. I just think that him trying to do those types of vocals, the only thing that I can say is that I'm glad that they're not turned up louder. Like that it is somewhat buried in the mix. And as a vocalist myself, that's kind of like what we like to do when we're not 100% confident in what we just did, you know? And it sounds like, you remember that part in Between the Buried and Me, the song Cheven'll Cut a Flip? Or no, it was Aspirations, where he does that crazy, insane, like, you know, high-pitched metal vocal. It's like that, but serious. And I actually, when he's not singing falsetto, this is the most whenever he starts using his own like actual clean singing voice. I don't mind it. This is going to be one of those really big divisive points for me and Geoff here, is that like I don't think that his voice sounds bad. Do I think that there are times when he does things that he's not capable of doing? Yes. I think that I do. I would not describe the clean vocals in Kekal in any capacity as being like really great vocals to listen to. Like I'll give it that. However, an argument can be made, because I made this argument with Norma Jean, believe it or not. Talk about two totally different bands. But I don't think that Corey from Norma Jean is like a great singer on his own either. Correct. But I do think that he sounds good in Norma Jean. And much in the same way, I think Geoff from Kekal sounds good singing with Kekal a lot of the time. There are times where it goes way above and beyond what it should. But at the same time, like there's also the vocalist in me that's like giving the dude props for trying a thing. And I think with the Painful Experience, this is such a prototype for everything Kekal's going to do after this. This adventurousness with the music, playing with the song structures, throwing in influences that you wouldn't normally think fit together. And to be honest, on this record, they don't always succeed. Sometimes things do not fit together. They don't make it work. It's not like a brilliant mashup. But I appreciate this record simply because we wouldn't have really cool records like Acidity and 1,000 Thoughts of Violence without it. And so I think this is just kind of a transitionary record, and it is painful. It's a birthing experience of a totally different type of band. And so I think in that regard, I respect it, even if I don't particularly enjoy listening to it all the time.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy listening to it either, Dan. Sorry.
2003, 1,000 Thoughts of Violence is what Dan is having right now.
That's probably true.
I don't have any issue with I don't have any issue with Geoff being wrong. I've dealt with that plenty of times.
Yeah, well, this is when I start really, it's funny because this is when I really start dropping off. And it's really, a lot of it has to do with the clean singing. It starts coming more and more to the front. I think I tolerated Vox Diabli the most because there was no cleans. It was all distorted. But the cleans for me, he goes so high on some of the stuff where he should not. It kills me. It just kills me.
I mean, I've been listening to King Diamond for decades, so I'm kind of used to that thing.
Yeah, well, I think I've also made my opinion on King Diamond known. So I mean, I'm not a fan of King Diamond either. So I mean, maybe that's just the vocal styling of that I don't like for whatever reason. I don't know. It's not like I dislike high pitched male vocals. Like Dimash is probably the greatest high pitched vocals of all time. Mike Patton.
No, you consistently like. Well, you also consistently like pop clean vocals, even in metal. You're like your favorite little petri dish is a super brutal band that has a vocalist that sounds like Jesus. You know what I mean? Like just sounds amazing. And I'm not like that. As a matter of fact, I'm more likely to get turned off of a band if that's the dynamic.
No, because I mean, let's stop and think about it. I mean, I'm a big fan of stuff like Pig Destroyer too. I mean, but then again, there's no clean vocals at all on that.
And Clowncore.
Right. But
yeah,
would you be
if your clean vocals are clean vocals, they better be really fucking good. That's my thing.
Well, and I think that there's different definitions on what good means. You know, like
I don't think the vocals are bad. I think Geoff in 2003 was not a good melody writer. And I think there's a huge difference between are you singing the correct pitch and are you performing an interesting melody line. And I think sometimes we get stuck on this idea that the vocals are supposed to be popular music levels of interesting, and they don't always have to be. How many times have I made fun of Dan for liking emo? Those guys aren't singing interesting melody lines most of the time. They're just hitting a high note and holding it. There's a good portion of this discography where that's all he's doing. And I think it fits from the perspective of, here's a very small band that would eventually become a one-man act, and he's trying to execute in the studio what he also has to execute on stage. So for that reason, he's maybe doing the best he can.
Okay. And you actually bring up something that's a very good point. Whenever you said something about emo, I mean, we beat a dead horse, and I'm going to beat it again.
Leave Bojack alone.
It is Jeremy Enoch. That dude does not have a great voice. Okay. I love him. Okay. So I'm starting to putting two things together, and it's probably going to make me be a little nicer because yes, Jeremy Enoch does not have the greatest of voice with anything he does. He's an acquired taste, but I've been listening to him since, before I could drive. So, and that's kind of what Kekal is for you guys. And that's what I need to look at it. This is something that you got to grow with, and you got to learn to appreciate. Just like how I know I have friends that love Cold War Kids. I can't stand that dude's voice to save my life. I see that guy, and I'm like, can I hit him in the mouth with a baseball bat so he'll shut the fuck up?
It's pretty aggressive, Geoff.
Yeah, well, that's how I think about the guy from that's the lead singer from Cold War Kids, and there's a ton of people that love him. So I just need to understand that it's different strokes for different folks, and Kekal's just, at the end of the day, I don't think it's not for me because I didn't grow up with it. I don't have that emotional connection to it. And I think that sometimes whenever you have clean vocals that are not good, that's what, because I mean, go talk to our parents with Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan is a god-awful vocalist. But people,
yeah, I mean, you're going to tell me that Tom Waits is a good,
Well, that's because I can.
He's the most brutal vocalist of all time.
Yeah, that's because I can sound like Tom Waits when I'm sick. That's the only reason why.
But can we talk about the music for a second? Because I feel like we're just talking about vocals, and
well, for me,
the most
this
interesting
is the problem that I do have. You're right. I end up focusing because I did the same thing on the Living Sacrifice episode. I get fixated, and it's hard for me to get off of it. And you're right,
because there is some amazing music that's going on 1,000 Thoughts of Violence. This is not like Painful Experience. This is the first time where the band started doing something that I'd never heard before. Right, because Beyond the Glimpse of Dreams, where it's a black metal record that's got a whole bunch of like death metal and thrash influences and some traditional heavy metal. Embrace the Dead was more black metal. The Painful Experience was all over the place because they're trying to find something new. They're trying to find it. They found it on 1,000 Thoughts of Violence. The band plays a mixture of technical thrashy black metal, copyright discussmetal.com. But it's more technically proficient. It sounds incredible, and it is so deeply melodic in places. How they're able to come out of this beautiful melody into a blast is frankly incredible. The electronic influences on this record add a lot to it, and just the general flow and dynamics of the songs. All of these songs are interesting to listen to. They go in a lot of different places. At one point, they go straight up into hip hop land.
Okay, is this the one I was thinking about where they were sampling a ton of hip hop? That was this album?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I loved that. I thought that was a really interesting addition. I mean, I was weirded out by it. I remember me and Buddy, and it's the song Violent Society, if anybody wants to check it out. But I think it sounds super cool. I've never heard extreme music blended with other types of music like this. And I don't know, Beyond Numerical Reasons is a great, epic song that's broken up into multiple parts. At least it is on the CD. I think it's just might have been one track on the CD, but anyway, that's not important. It's broken into three distinct kind of movements. And I think this is incredible. This is, on certain days, 1,000 Thoughts of Violence is my favorite Kekal record, but there are other days where it's Acidity. And I think that this is where the term avant-garde really starts getting thrown around, because this band is in the blending of other styles. This is not like eating soup, right? Whenever a lot of bands talk about blending styles, what they really mean is they're making a soup, right? You're taking a bite out of the soup, you're taking a sip of the soup, And in one sip, you're going to get a potato. And then in the next sip, you're going to get some peas, or maybe some carrots, or maybe some chicken or something like that. A Thousand Thoughts of Violence is more like a smoothie where, you know, they put all these ingredients into the magic bullet and they've shredded them to the point where they've created a new flavor. And this is the flavor of Kekal going forward, and I'm all for it. I liked this part of the band where they're doing all this cool electronic experimental stuff, but they still bring the brutality with it. They still bring the heavy black metal, extreme metal vocal.
It's a weird combination of early 2000s advances in recording technology, at-home recording technology, mixed with, we've been listening to all these thrash bands and progressive metal bands for the past however long the dude's been playing guitar at this point. How are we going to put this together and make something that your average guitarist, your average band as a whole cannot play? Because most people in 2003, when you say the word progressive metal, there's one answer: Dream Theater. And as we have discussed many times on this show, that is not the only answer. 2005, Dan, it's time. Acidity.
You know what they forgot to put on the last album?
All the songs from Acidity?
Jazz. Now let's talk about this for a second, because, you know, oh boy, jazz and metal. I am not going to be the person that tells you that, oh, you've got jazz influences. That makes you super cool. Unless you're Candiria, in which case it's super, super cool. But Acidity is interesting in that it largely abandons black metal as its base style. Sure, there's black metal shrieking in it, but the songs themselves sound like the experimental moments that are found on A Thousand Thoughts of Violence, mixed with almost a hard rock sound structure, which actually gives it the effect of seeming more experimental than the previous album, because now you're dealing with like traditional song structures and melodic flourishes, or even A Dream for a Moment, which is a song that sounds like it should have a chorus, but I mean, it does have a chorus, but then it's also got this like insane improvised jazz solo right in the middle of it. And it sounds like the entire world's being torn apart. And it's like, it started off like so beautiful. It's like Kekal's version of Everlong. You know what I mean? Like, it's that song that like the first 2 minutes of it lull you into this false sense of security of like, oh wow, like what are they doing here? Like, this is like, it's like driving and it's heavy and it's got like that synth on it, you know, and you know, there's clean singing that Geoff hates, and there's all of this, you know, all of this going on, but then like you've still got the black metal shriek sort of enhancing the vocals. It's like lingering in there by this, like, it's like a lingering presence of the song, and then it progressively gets like more and more distorted. And by the time you get to like 4 minutes in, there's all kinds of crazy things that have happened to you as a listener. And that's what makes it not like an Everlong, you know. It's just it's different. And I don't really know how to describe it. That's the hardest part about talking about this band, is that like they are doing things that I've never heard another band do. It is the true expression of experimentation with a band that actually has a budget, is signed to a label, and is able to kind of do whatever they want with no restrictions. And this is what you get. And yeah, it's not going to go down for everybody because it's weird. The songs don't sound like each other. Every song is a very unique experience in and of itself, and it's just a Kekal thing. It's just the way that it is. But yeah, I mean, this record, oof.
Yeah, Dan, I think you're actually hitting on something else that I guess it's the old school old fart in me, where I'm a start to finish kind of listener on an album, and I did read a little bit about this one because it had quite a bit of reviews, and it was about how, you know, this is literally like each song is like its own little thing, and it just kind of adds to it. And it was about how, I don't know, almost like Acidity, like heartburn kind of thing. Like when you have a bunch of shit and you throw it together, you end up with heartburn. That was one of the things that I read about it, that Geoff was actually talking about. I think that's part of why I sometimes have a challenge with them too, is that they are so purposely all over the place. It just makes it hard for an old head like me that likes to listen from start to finish, it's a very difficult listen, especially when it's almost an hour. It's like 50 something minutes long too.
Oh, most of their albums are that long.
I know, but that's what I'm trying to get at. That's what makes it hard for somebody like me, on why I'm just the whiny little bitch in the corner on this one. I mean, I'll admit to it. I don't get to have the strong base that you guys do as far as like my dislike, because I'm just now discovering it. It's not like I could bitch about Nickelback or whatever all day long because I've heard about them, Cold or something like that all day long. Kekal is a new thing for me. It's so new and so weird that it's almost off-putting. But it's one of those things. If I listen to it more, maybe I could get over those fears.
This is the point in the discography where it becomes obvious to me. Most songs fade in, fade out. The way I see this record in my head is like a serialized production of songs. Each scene is supposed to be its own version of the atmosphere, the emotion, but twisted a specific way. It's more like a video odyssey than it is an audio listening experience. But did we have a budget for that? So what we have is a very random but technically interesting combination of underground heavy metal ideas. And I've heard a lot of these ideas done by other bands, but in much larger quantities. I don't know if Kekal set out to write individual songs with different feelings, or if this is, what do we have today? Get through it. Well, that's an hour worth of music. Let's put a record out. And I'll be honest, I don't care, because if you were lucky enough to see this band live, you didn't care either. You just heard their best, and I think in 2005, this is their version of their best. And I think this is their best, technically.
Really depends on the day for me. I go back and forth between it and 1,000 Thoughts. The meathead in me wants to lean towards the more black metal one. Just straight up like let's just be extreme and weird, and because to me listening to black metal is like very run of the mill. You know what I mean? It's business as usual. But there's a certain portion of the population that if you show them a record like 1,000 Thoughts of Violence, the black metal will be equally as shocking as the hip hop drop, and all the weirdness that goes with it. I think this was Kekal firing on all cylinders as a metal band at the time, and keeping it kind of in that pocket. But yeah, I mean, I just never heard anything else like it. And I think the biggest takeaway from this episode is the word underground. This is the epitome of experimental underground music. And unfortunately, when it comes to underground music, there's only a certain amount of people that are going to appreciate it, And I think that and I don't mean underground as in we're signed to a minor label, or we're I don't know, there's still expectations of bands that are kind of in that mid tier. Kekal's never even, I mean, I know they sold 5,000 copies of Beyond the Glimpse of Dreams, and they were a big deal in their own right in the underground. But I think this is a band that sort of celebrates their undergroundness a little bit. And I think that is why it can be so divisive sometimes, because it's not like you can just go to a CD store in the mid 2000s, to be clear. You can't just go to a CD store and buy Acidity by Kekal and listen to it and be like, oh, wow, that was a really cool metal album. I think most people's first experience with it would probably be negative. And it might be a grower. It was a grower for me. I mean, the first album I ever heard by Kekal was Embrace the Dead, which is a totally different experience, not a painful experience, but a different experience altogether than what you'd get on 1,000 Thoughts and Acidity. And so even those records took me a little bit of time to kind of adjust to, because at the time I had no reference point for what they were doing. I grew up thinking that Kekal was a black metal band, And then as I got older, I started realizing that actually there's a lot more going on here. It's just I hadn't grown enough as a music fan to really be able to figure be able to pinpoint okay, now they're doing a hip hop thing, and now they're doing a prog metal thing. Okay, now they're doing a black metal thing. Now they're doing an industrial thing. I didn't have all those terms and those points of reference. So I would say that these albums did, I don't want to give off the impression that I just listened to these albums and loved them instantly. It's like drinking IPAs, you'll either develop a taste for it or you won't.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or you'd be like me and still think they're nasty. Yeah, IPA is not my thing either.
2007. The Habit of Fire.
I know I sound like a broken record, but this album's really freaking good. And I don't care what anybody says. I think that Geoff's vocals actually sound good here. I think he sings in his range a lot more than he has in the past or in the future in certain cases. I liked everything about this record. I liked the fact that it was a concept record, their first. I'm not going to get into the concept because it's like very sci-fi, very like cyberpunk almost. But it's also very political. There's a lot of stuff on this record that Geoff hates. But it's not. I don't think it's politics that as we would understand them. But current day. But I don't know. I liked that this record, they went full on in the electronics. This is still metal. There's still metal riffs being played, but this is like so far beyond being a black metal record. The closest you're going to get is like progressive metal meets heavy metal with a whole bunch of electronics on top of it. I think this has their most hooky songs. Isolated Eye, I think, is good. There's an instrumental on this album called Our Urban Industry Runs Monotonously. That's still one of my favorite instrumental songs to listen to. This is prime cut Kekal. I have more of an emotional attachment to Acidity and 1,000 Thoughts. But when this thing came out, I thought it was amazing. And I still like it to this day. It goes on a little long with Escapism being 14 minutes long, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, 70 minutes. That was a little much for me. It's hard.
It's a weird combination of what we figured out in the past two albums creatively. It has that slightly open, airy sound. The band is not close mic'd heavy metal where there's no reverb, there's no room space in the sound. And I think that's a combination of just recording the different sources the best they can independently. But I do think Kekal has a sound at this point. Now you're going to throw random 90s electronics on the top of it. Sign me up. I think it's cool. I think it's another example of what is good about this band. And I think if another band did this, more people would consider it to be one of the high points in progressive music. This could easily be a Between the Buried and Me record with more rehearsal time and different voices, different faces, different everything.
Yeah, I will say this because I wasn't on the BT Bam episode. There's parts of BT Bam that drive me nuts too. So I mean, it's not just that I'm hating on Kekal. It's just kind of like it's almost like an ADD feeling that the music kind of gives me. And BT Bam's kind of is a lot the same way. And so there's parts of BT Bam that drive me nutso as well. But yeah, for me, it is a difficult digest. This one was one of the hardest ones, just because this one was, I think all the others around, like you said, 50 minutes. There's like an extra, 30% added to this one that just makes it pretty difficult for me to personally digest, just because that's just a lot of sitting there to focus on an album for somebody who's not as into the music. I would say this. I would not offer this one as a for the first time listeners album consumption, just because of the length. I mean, I can say the same thing about a bunch of Swallow the Sun albums on which ones you should and shouldn't do. Just because
I could too.
Just because of how long they get. And it's well, yeah, there is certain albums of theirs like unless you're a huge fanboy like me, stay the fuck away from it. I mean, because there's just no way that you're as a casual music fan are going to be able to tolerate it just because it's so long. And that's kind of how I felt on this one. It just it was just a lot to digest. And not enough time for me to take a break.
It's also worth noting that Joe and I were in a band around this time, and we were actually signed to the same label as Kekal at this exact time.
Consider that the high point of your career.
We didn't talk. We didn't hang out. We didn't even meet. We didn't even acknowledge one another.
Shout out to Downlord.
I did get this record from the record label owner for free. And so that was cool. But yeah, I think that I don't know. I really enjoyed this, and I was super stoked to be on the same label. I mean, they weren't signed to the label in the sense of they had a distribution deal, with Open Grave at the time, and so yeah. And would you believe that this record was actually Kekal's highest selling record?
Really?
Yeah,
I would not
sold
have
more
guessed
copies than any other one, and it was released worldwide. So there you go.
I think it's clear that Kekal is not a band you should listen to all of it at the same time. I think this is one of the most interesting albums, on its own. And having heard all of these records over time, I have my favorites. And I think you need to take the randomness in pieces just the way it was released, because that's the only way you're really going to find the gems inside of the discography. 2008, Audible Minority.
All right. Well, the first thing that I got to say is I really want to hear the Aha cover. Do you guys have it? Because I don't.
You really want to hear it?
Yeah, dude. I'm serious. I mean, I love Aha, so that just I was just super curious on if you guys had it or not.
I don't know if I do have it or not.
We'll talk after the show, Geoff.
All right. Yeah. Well, we can probably find that for you. Yeah. Okay. So this is different. This is unlike anything that the band's put out before. And this is where, I think years ago as a fan, this is where I kind of jumped off because I didn't know what was going on. I was like, where's the metal? Why is this not black metal? This is not black metal. It
wasn't black metal in the first place.
Yes, I know. Yeah. This isn't black metal. Never was. But Audible Minority is a very, very dark electronic, mostly electronic album. You could call it industrial, but it really, it's a stretch to even call it industrial because there's times where it sounds like dark wave too. We're kind of getting into some genres. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are like, God, we're talking about dark wave. But there's a lot of influences in this that I almost feel like Geoff would appreciate more.
Yeah, I tolerated this one more than some of the others. I'm not gonna lie. Because I'm a big new wave fan.
Yeah, there's a little bit of new wave going on here.
Yeah, well that's there's some new wave, there's some industrial. So yeah, you're right. Musically speaking, I minded probably the least, to be honest with you. I didn't. It's just as a whole, it's been a jarring experience. It's kind of like if you've never been in a race car. And your buddies get you in the race car and they're like, watch all the shit that we can do in this thing. And you're like, oh my God. That's kind of what I felt like. Cause I'm just
that's like every Kekal album.
Yeah. I'm like, holy shit. And as soon as you're like, oh God, it's a straight. So then we go 220 miles an hour. Oh my God. You're like, just stop. And you're like, yep, we're going to stop and we're going to turn the car sideways as we go around the corner and smash your head into the side of the car.
Who let Geoff drive?
Honestly, I think you just described the band better than really any of us could. You're not going to believe everything we can do in this thing. Because that really is. You're like, when you're listening to Kekal, it's like being in Willy Wonka's Wonka Vader, right? There's a million buttons and you're never sure which button's going to get pressed next, right? I could definitely tell you the song Ceasefire Negative made me genuinely uncomfortable through most of it because it was so dark and weird. And then you get 3 minutes in and there's ska horns going on in the background. Maybe it's not ska, but whatever. But it's horns. It's positive, but then there's this griminess. And before that, they're playing what sounds like something from a like the keyboard effect that they're using sounds like a dollar store. Remember those old dollar store blasters you used to be able to buy, and they'd all play the same 6 sounds.
Yeah,
but it's like wow 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 wow. And they just played it over and over and over forever for 3 minutes, and I was it was starting to piss people off at work because I stopped listening to headphones at work and now I just listen to my music out loud at my desk. And during Kekal week they were like,
what the hell, dude?
I never want to talk to this person again. He's clearly unhinged. There's something wrong with him. They all really loved Embrace the Dead, let me tell you. But the whole record is very dark. For having some new wave influence, it is very dark.
There's plenty of new wave that's dark.
Right, but it sounds happy. That's the whole fun part about new wave is that it sounds happy, but it's not.
Well, yeah, okay. That's true.
The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had.
Tear us apart.
Yeah, so
again.
I think dude just discovered Circle of Dust on this one.
No, I think that Geoff from Kekal listens to much more underground. Actually, I'm gonna shout this out. If you go to Kekal's Facebook page right now, they have got a link to the top 100 of like his favorite albums of all time. And I listened to some of those in preparation of the episode. I was like, yeah, okay, I could see that. Yeah, I understand. You know, one song absolutely messes with me really bad, and that is the song "Virtue of Perseverance." It is just whack job jazz like there's a whole lot of weird stuff going on in this record. I know that we say that on like every Kekal album, but yeah, this one was definitely the crown king of weirdness, you know, until they put another one out.
Yeah, and then it's on to the next.
Yeah.
2010 8.
Hey, we're almost there, Geoff. We made it to 8.
Yeah, the problem is take the 8, rotate it 90 degrees, and that's kind of how I feel. It is when listening to, yes, when I've been listening to these. It's been interesting to say the least. But yeah, this is the one that and this is the one they got back to like black metal. Is that this one?
No, buddy. We're in for a we're in for a bit of a.
Okay, that's the problem is I listen to a lot of Kekal while I'm driving. I don't get to write down my notes like I used to. And I'm not going to type while I'm driving, Joe. Absolutely not. I drive on 270. I put my life in peril every day. Well, you probably do too, so you understand what I'm talking about.
I'm just listening to the prettiest sounding melody and this droning keyboard sound that is just a repeated note over and over and over again. And a fairly, I'm not going to say old school, but go back about 3 records sounding Kekal. I think for the fans, the diehards, those that fell in love with 1,000 Thoughts of Violence, I think this is what we're here for in 2010. I wish I spent more time with Kekal at this time. I didn't jump back in until late 2018, and we're going to get to that momentarily. I think this is another random explosion of whatever sounds we had available at the time, trying to create an interesting layered something is how I'm going to describe it at this point. I think Dan said it best earlier. The avant-garde is not lost on this record.
I think at this point, it's interesting to note that like all official members of the band had quit the band up to that point. So what we're looking at here, and it's funny because it says in all their press stuff, like, yes, Kekal continues as a band with no members, which is like funny, but also really evident here because it's clearly just a guy doing some experimental music on his own.
A guy named Geoff.
Yeah, and he was in this band called Kekal that did a lot of experimental stuff too. So it's one of those like, I want to put this album out and I've got the name Kekal, so I'm just going to put it out as a Kekal album because people are more likely to check it out if it's that. Because this one takes a hard swing into even more like digging even deeper than they had dug on Audible Minority, you know, and this one does come across as probably the most random. And like, according to like the like, I guess the little press blip that I assume is written by him as well. But it just says that like it's a collection of thoughts and emotions blended together into a unique yet bold statement. Each song displays its character as a balance between electronic and organic elements, rhythm and melody, aggression and atmosphere, simplicity and complexity, beauty and the beast. And I think that is a pretty apt description of it. But I think
almost sounds like you're describing a craft beer.
Yeah. You should pick up Discussmetal IPA. It's 28% alcohol. It's just grain alcohol. We just slapped our sticker on it. Don't drink it. But like,
buy it and give it to Dan.
Buy it and give it to me. Yeah. Give me my own beer back. Send it back to me. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I liked this one, but I'd be lying if I said that like it's my favorite or it's an all-time classic. I think it's really cool to listen to, and it's great to just absolutely keep your coworkers on their toes. You know, the whole time that if they made the mistake of coming anywhere near your desk.
Yeah, this is now that you had mentioned it. This I said black metal before, and that's a different one I'm thinking of. This is the one with the theremin on it, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Because I know one of them had a theremin on it, and I was like, "Oh shit, theremin on a metal / avant-garde record."
Only
interesting. Only
Kekal. Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that I mean it's not my favorite, but again, At this point, I'm stoked that they're still this experimental. Like, to be honest with you, I'm surprised because I would imagine the record sales probably have been tanking since Audible Minority, and yet the dude is still pressing on in this like experimental direction. I'm actually kind of proud of them that they didn't go back to black metal, because like all you got to do is put out another record like Embrace the Dead or Beyond the Glimpse of Dreams, like with modern recording technology, and you probably do pretty well for yourself. But that was not the goal.
2012, Autonomy.
You better watch out for Pandora's empty box.
What did you think was going to happen when you opened it?
My be in it.
I missed that beep, Geoff. Thank you so much.
Oh, the beep. So I don't know how else to explain it. This is like
a video game soundtrack.
There it is. It does sound like a video game soundtrack. And that's not a bad thing. It sounds like a video game soundtrack to the greatest cyberpunk video game that I've never played.
Shadowrun for the Sega Genesis.
I mean, that one was pretty good. I did enjoy that one. I like the Super Nintendo one too. They're different games. In case you didn't know, they're both called Shadowrun, but they're different games. Anyway, we'll save that discussion for Discuss Metal Gaming.
Yeah. But Acicorp all the way, boys.
Oh man. Syndicate, you guys remember Syndicate?
Get out of my house.
All right. Yeah, this one's more electronica, I think. But then you also have like songs like Space Between Spaces, which like are more metal, like sound more like actual Kekal, if that makes sense. So like it's almost like we're slowly clawing back towards like, because he's still not above every now and again in these songs, like to just go into a scream, just to kind of just like, oh, you still awake, right? Like there's a lot of like freak out moments on these later Kekal albums, and I love them. I like this one especially because it's more like electronica and it's more of a vibe. It's a vibe record, and it's actually more consistent, I think, than the last two have been. A little bit more unified. Like we sat down to like make an actual record this time.
If you wanted random and you're listening to Kekal and you didn't find random up until this point, I give you Autonomy, because you can't get much more random than the creative opposite of almost everything released up till this point. It's slow, it's brooding, it's melodic, and we don't use the same type of digital drums we've been using up to this point. It still has that Kekal sound to it, but it does sound like we're trying something new and forcing ourselves to like it.
That's fair. I didn't have to force myself to like this one. I thought it was good because it was a little bit more simple. The ideas are presented in a less complex way, in a less jarring way. And so, yeah, I thought that was super cool.
2015, Multilateral.
I'm so surprised that this album is as good as it is. And I say that because they're kind of going back to the Kekal sound here. It's still very electronic. Like it's one of those like, okay, guys, we went as far as we could with that, and it's now part of us. But I don't know. There's more like blast beat drumming. There's more.
Yeah. So this is the one that I was thinking of.
This is where they kind of start going back towards the rock and metal sound.
Okay.
Now, this is not an album that, like, again, I don't think any Kekal album is an album that you're just going to buy and listen to and immediately love and immediately get. It's still very, very odd, but I like it. It's not as dark to me as their previous albums have been. I feel like some of their older stuff, not older stuff now. I guess what I mean is like their most like recent like 3 records have been very dark and sort of just depressing, like not coming from a good place mentally. And this record, they kind of like they lighten it up a little bit. Like it's heavy, it's got intense moments and stuff. Like the song Neutrality on this record is woo. It's a fine cut of Kekal. Let me put it that way. It's got all the good things. And I remember too reading the social media posts, because I've kind of followed Kekal off and on their website and on social media. And he was talking about how like just asking people, he's like, should I just go back to playing black metal? Like is that what people want? Is that the kind of music that people think that I'm the best at making? And kind of going through that creative self-doubt, right? Like it happens to me on the podcast. I'm like, should we only talk about death metal bands like Morgoth? Is that what people want? It's not what I want, but it is what people want.
What do you want? Send your emails to danandjoeshow@gmail.com.
Let us know.
Yeah, I would. whether I like the music or not, I think it should be inconsequential as far as the artist is concerned. I think the artist should be making music that is the most creative and heartfelt avenue for them. So me as a critic, it shouldn't matter. If he was to the point where he's asking others what he should do, then he shouldn't be doing any of it. That's just how I feel. I feel like, as soon as he starts doubting it himself, I'm hoping that he had enough good support that, people just said, dude, you're awesome. Just you do you. You take care of you. What feels good, what feels right to you is what you should do.
I think it was more of a moment of just sort of self-reflection, that artistic kind of like, is what I'm doing not working? I think we all go through that.
I know, but I guess what I'm saying is we all go through that, but we should all have that friend or that person or that conscience that tells you, you know what, you can get past this, get past that doubt, and we know that you can do this. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I'm hoping that he had that. And
I think that he did have that if you listen to this album, because it has 100% of the creative integrity that you've come to expect from this band. And that just happens to include a more aggressive styling. I think that's the cool thing about Kekal is like every now and again, you're never really quite sure if it's ever going to happen, but every now and again they'll bust out, they'll play a black metal song. Yeah, it's going to end weird, with clean vocals and tons of electronics and a great beat, but like there's heavy riffs. I don't know. As a metal fan, Multilateral is one of the best albums that they've put out since like Acidity, in my opinion. But I don't think it's a return to the root or anything like that. I don't think one unique thing about Kekal is they've literally never done the same thing twice.
And yet they sound so Kekal. It's 2015. There are multiple records at this point, multiple bands that are putting out cookie cutter sounding fake drums, triggered everything, the same Kemper gent sound on your guitar. And Kekal still sounds like Kekal. Even though it's 2015 and we have better technology, they still sound like that atmospheric, heavy metal influenced progressive black metal band that they have been since the very beginning. I do think you're right. I think it's a creative choice, and he's just sticking with what he wants everything to sound like.
So you're telling me we went from a race car to a monster truck and still gonna go
with a Wonkivator.
It's a different vehicle, but it's the same crazy ass driver behind the wheel.
Not only is the driver fucking crazy, we went deeper underground in that monster truck. 2018. Hey, Dan, do you remember in 2018 when we discovered Kekal was still putting records out and they had just released Deeper Underground and it sounded like Kekal?
Dude, like if Multilateral was good, Deeper Underground is great. This is almost a full-on return to the black metal, that dirty, just grimy sort of underground black metal sound. Only it sounds a hell of a lot better because it's 2017 and you can record things that sound good without having to sneak into a studio after dark and and record it. But I love this. The electronics, the extreme metal, it all blends together to make a beautiful record. This is also, I don't know if it's a concept album or not. I'm not gonna lie, this record, whenever I bought it, this was actually one of the first records I bought on Bandcamp. That was before they were offering the whole discography for $25.
Go buy
Link
it now.
In the description. Go buy it. You'll get some context. So when you're listening to this episode, I think you should, number one, pay the $25. That money does not go to us. It goes directly to Kekal. Okay. Do that. Do the discography discussion thing with us. Listen to each of these records before you listen to us talk about them. I think that this is a very unique experience for that. I mean, I guess music streaming, you could do the same thing, but regardless, you can't get every Kekal album on streaming. So, but yeah, Deeper Underground is absolutely a full circle kind of release.
Yeah, it's less disjointed.
Yeah, it's the songwriting is there, where now the experimentation has been toned down a little bit in favor of good songs. And so you're getting creative decisions that are made for the sake of the song itself. And I think it's a good move for them. I think they still sound weirder than any other band that's out there. But I think on this record, this may actually be the most digestible Kekal album. If you're talking about like what's the first one you should go check out, I would recommend this one.
I would agree with that 100%. I really would. And it's because of like what we talked about. It is more it's like multifaceted instead of just being avant-garde to just don't know what's going to hit next. I think there's dare I say that there's a Kekal album that it's there's a bit of formula to it.
A little bit
on this one, and I think this is probably the one that I like the most out of everything that I listened to of theirs.
I'm also going to go out on a limb here and say that I think that the clean singing is also significantly better on this record than what we've had in the past. I think he's making better creative vocal decisions, and it's starting to pay off. I think if you just hate the sound of the dude's voice, you're just not going to like it ever. But I think it sounds cool. He does a lot of like kind of deeper register, sort of creepy vocals. I call them Palpatine vocals.
Yeah, he does do that. Well, he also, I like the guy that he has. What is it? Revealment, I think is the song.
Oh yeah. With Vox Lucas.
Yeah.
I probably said that wrong, but it's really cool. It sounds really cool.
Yeah. So like that's probably the most tolerable song out of everything that I listen to. This is the one that I liked. Like I said, overall, this is the album I like the most. That's probably the song I like the most. That and that Vox Diaboliki or whatever it was. I can't remember if it was Vox. I can't. But those are the two songs I liked the most out of everything that they did. So that's
Vox Diaboliki. No, even I messed it up. Vox Diaboli.
Okay, you said it. I'm gonna stick with that. Ask me to pronounce the weird Scandinavian names, and you can do everything else.
look out for our Viljarta.
Oh God! Oh shit! I should have said that because that one has got so much weird shit in it. I can't do that one.
You're gonna have a lot of trouble defending that album after what you said about this band.
Oh, don't worry. I think I'm gonna shock a lot of people on that one.
We'll
subscribe to Patreon. You can hear that individual album review.
But no, I didn't. I definitely could tolerate this one. If someone had this one on the played this one, this is the one that I'm least likely to tell you to turn off.
What a phenomenal change of pace, not just for this band, because it takes that formula that they've been changing up along the way for the past 20 years, and they create what is, in my opinion, their best stream of consciousness in an album. But it's 2018. Does this record sound like anybody else? No, it does not. Because everybody else is trying to sound like all that shit I said earlier about popular metal. So you have one of the most interesting records that came out in 2018 for me, guitar player, drummer, producer, and fan of Kekal. And then 2020 happened. What a shitty year it was. And Kekal puts out Quantum Resolution.
My dudes, this is by and large. I mean, I hate to be that fanboy guy that's like, yeah, the best album's the new one. But this is everything you like about Kekal times 10. This is a whole fleet of race cars. Like it really is. I mean, everything is improved. The songwriting's improved. The vocals are improved. The vocals actually sound really good on this record, I think. And all the electronics are there. Oh my goodness, just like this. Some of the beats on this are just incredible. And I like Geoff's voice. I think it sounds cool. He's got kind of a cool reverb on it that makes it sound like kind of like ethereal. And I mean, I think the production quality sounds better. I think this thing punches harder, and it's still got a little bit of that metal in it. But you're starting to see stuff that you saw from like not Deeper Underground, like 8 and Audible Minority. There's like some of that influence in here as well. But again, it's much more digestible. Like you have a song like Testimony. And then you have a song. Testimony's like sounds like something that would come off of like Audible Minority, and then you've got Spiritual Anarchism, which is just very, very, very heavy. It sounds like something that came off of something that would have come off of 1,000 Thoughts of Violence. It's not exactly a Kekal greatest hits, but like I hear different eras of the band in this record.
I don't think it's the best album, but again, it's 2020. I'm so glad we got a new Kekal record. I think this one pulls from the best parts of the discography It feels a little more random in places, but it's one of the few times the band is really changing pieces of their sound. Even though I think at the core, the guitars have the same overall sound. We're using the digital drums. That hasn't changed. But something about it just feels like we're moving forward. If this band can move forward 20 years later. It's not my favorite record, but I am just glad that it's still here.
Honestly, I think this is like deeper underground in that, like, this is a record I think you could start people on Kekal with, and it actually gives a more diverse platter of what the band has to offer throughout their discography.
Yeah, I would disagree. I would still tell you deeper underground before this by quite a bit, personally.
Is it that time? Did Geoff make it through the episode?
Just barely. He seems like he's just holding on by a thread.
Yeah. Let's just say there was some palate cleansing done this week.
Final thoughts on Kekal. Dan.
Contrary to what anybody else's final thoughts may or may not be, I think that if you are into experimental music and you don't like people to tell you what a sound is supposed to be like, you don't want somebody to tell you what a style is supposed to be, and what normal musical conventions are supposed to be. You know, whenever I was younger, I took music appreciation classes. I took a couple of music theory classes in college, and I could never get past somebody just like mathematically trying to explain to me what's good and what's not good. It's too subjective, because to me, music, I think when you get too technical with music, it becomes all about just cold mathematical precision. And, you know, if you follow these 3 easy steps, then you'll write a good song. You know, and growing up, you know, I would show teachers and authority figures things that I was into or things that I liked. And there was always kind of this thing thrown up in my face of them being like, well, that doesn't make any musical sense. I played in bands with people that would tell me the same thing. I don't play in bands with those people anymore. I don't like to be told how I feel. I don't like to be told how I'm supposed to feel. For me, music is about a feeling, and Kekal's largely the reason that I look at music the way that I look at it. Because at the end of the day, it's really about how it makes me feel. And I know you guys are going to pull up a whole bunch of examples of me being like, this isn't good, or that's not good, or this sucks, and da-da-da-da. I'm sorry that I didn't feel the same thing that you felt when you were listening to it. I mean, I'm not sorry. Like, I feel the way I feel, you know, whatever. But it doesn't invalidate if you like a band that I don't like. That's totally cool. I like Kekal. I like almost all of the musical choices that they've made. And I'm trying not to fanboy too much. I hope I've been a little objective in this episode, but Kekal for me is the ultimate example of doing whatever you want musically and just going wherever that creative spark takes you, and everybody else can take it or leave it.
Geoff, what about you?
I get where Dan's coming from. The, you know, screw you, I'll do what I want to do the way that I want to do it, and that makes me feel good. I mean, there's certain bands for me that scratch that itch. You know, for me, Kekal is not one of them, you know, and that's fine. I have issues with some of the guitar tones. Some of the synth stuff drives me nuts, and the clean singing as well. Doesn't matter. As long as the other Geoff is happy with the music that he is making, that's what counts. And my opinion is null and void when it comes to the things of that nature. You know, we can sit here and we can be, you know, music elitist, but it does, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. This is what's cathartic for him. This is what makes him feel good. And if it happens to make other people feel good, which it obviously does for Dan and Joe, then, you know, mission accomplished, even if it's just one other person.
I think Kekal is one of the most random, interesting bands to listen to. For the most part, the ideas are rooted in something from heavy metal's past, whether that's progressive metal, black metal, heavy metal, melodic. I think it's interesting, this combination of atmospheric elements with the will to create something musical. We've never had a drummer in this band, not on tape. Everything has been the laptop in the corner of the stage. And it just works for this band in a way I can't explain. It's the same effect as your favorite industrial band. There's something about Nine Inch Nails, there's something about Circle of Dust, that the digital fake drums are okay. Usually that's not the case with metal bands, but there's this piece of independent underground alternative heavy metal from the early 2000s where that's all they had. The idea to create something grind, something absurd that, yes, the drums were fake, but the record was supposed to be this wall of compressed noise, and for the most part, none of that sounds good. Here's Kekal that puts together these ideas in a way that is interesting, and I'm going to lean on something I said earlier. I think each piece is its own serial, its own independent idea that sometimes gets expanded into a full record. I think you've heard bands that have the same influences as Kekal, so you are missing out if you don't spend the $25, buy the discography, and enjoy it. There's a lot here that's really interesting. It's not all great, but the pieces that are great exceed expectations when it comes to underground metal. So go listen to Kekal. Dan, what's your album of the week?
Well, just to be different, I talk about how I love, experimental, original, cool music. Yeah, my album of the week is Still Sucks by Limp Bizkit. It just dropped a few days ago. I've listened to it about 30 times. And I dig it, man. I dig it.
Geoff, what about you?
I went in a spot that's not surprising. I went to Tesseract, Altered State, and that my safety blanket. I had to listen to Ash O'Hara's voice, make me feel better.
Got to listen to those pretty boy vocals.
Yep, that's exactly what it was. I needed my formulaic pretty boy prog rock band, and that was my palate cleanser for this week. Quite a bit.
Mine is going to be Acidity by Kekal, because if you don't take my advice and Dan's advice and some of Geoff's advice and go listen to all of it, you need to at least listen to that one. Because when you say Kekal, to me, that's the record I'm thinking of. And I think for most people, that is the record that defines this band's sound. And what a beautiful sound it is, right, Dan?
I mean, I enjoy it.
Props to Geoff for just sticking it out this week.
Oh, it was rough.
I admit, I expected more for you.
No, I mean, I'm not one to take a big poo-poo on something that somebody else loves.
I said for you, not from you, Geoff.
Yeah.
I got exactly what I expected.
Oh. I thought I was being nice.
Take us out, DFT.
If you guys like this podcast, especially after listening to all of that, and you want to give us some suggestions, tell us how we're doing, you let us know what bands you want to hear us talk about on the podcast. Let us know if you agree, you disagree. There's so many different ways you can do that. You can reach out to us on Facebook at facebook.com/discography discussion. You can follow us on Instagram at discussmetal, also on Twitter at discussmetal. You can send us an email at danandjoeshow@gmail.com, and we will check it and we will read it and we will talk about it and respond to it and all the things. And I just want to thank all of you guys for listening to the podcast this long, being this many episodes in. I'm just so happy to see all of you guys still here. And make sure to check us out on YouTube. Check out Discuss Metal Dan on YouTube, where we post live interviews and I do some countdown top 5 type videos. So make sure you're subbed to that channel because you'll get some extra content that you don't have to pay for. But if you want some content that you do want to pay for, you can follow us on Patreon. You can subscribe, I think, at $1 is the lowest tier, and you'll get access to multiple years worth of individual album reviews that we've done in the style of this podcast. So it's definitely something you don't want to miss out on. If you pay a little bit more money, you actually get to be part of the now legendary Discography Discussion Patreon Hangouts that we do once a month. Make sure to check those out. It's a chance for you to just kind of shoot the breeze with us, play some games, have some fun, and just generally try to have a positive experience with you guys every month. I know I look forward to it, and hopefully we'll see you guys there.
And on that note, this has been episode 247 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion. And please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
Give me your money.
$1 a month gets you into that exclusive album review feed.